Welcome here. We have a man by the name Ed Henley. He used to be in projects like Black Dog Productions and Plaid, however you pronounce that with a German accent. What's the proper pronunciation to that?
We say plaid, but you can say it how you want.
Probably use this.
Yep. Yep, we say plaid.
Oh, Blad.
Yeah.
Blad?
Plaid.
It's a Gaelic word, eh?
If you would say it with a Gaelic accent, you'd say plaid, which means party in Welsh, I think.
How were your initial reactions when you learned that people are calling what you're doing intelligent?
It's weird because I've never really heard music that isn't intelligent. If you have intelligent music, therefore you must have dumb music, and maybe dumb music is some pop music, I don't know, but I don't really hear music and think of intelligence anyway. It's not really something to do with intellect for me anyway. There's definitely academic music that perhaps is more about intelligence and intellectualism than most types of music, but I don't think this kind of music that we make is intelligent. And I don't think it's dumb either, it's just music.
When you guys came out, a lot of people, was in a time when these thoughts were kind of prominent in doing music. You wanted to have people to listen to the music as such and not be distracted by Egyptian numerology or whatever.
No, we fell into the inverse glamour trap where we thought we'd sort of wow people with our knowledge of the sort of esoteric kind of knowledge, and I think we did try and project a sort of a mysterious kind of image. But we used to host, when we were at Black Dog, we used to host a lot of websites and things that were to do with those kind of Egyptian cults and things like that. And so there was just an association, but the music really didn't have anything to do with it. We weren't using formulas or special kind of equations in our music. It was just the association, because we used to run BBSs, and it was the sort of early days of the internet, where it was bulletin board systems, and we used to host the Pagan Federation site as well.
What were the associations you had when you're doing the music? Because obviously people, it's fueling imagination to a certain extent. What were the imaginary parts that led you to do the kind of stuff?
I think mostly it's especially then it was escapist music for us. It was the sort of typical bedroom, sit in your bedroom for hours, don't ever go out, lead a completely sort of introvert life, and just write music constantly. And I think it was escaping from sort of fairly dull jobs. And
what dull jobs were these?
A computer programmer, and Andy was a shipping clerk, and Ken was a caretaker. So we all had these jobs which weren't that fulfilling. They were really just to pay the rent. So I think certainly at that point the music was just to express kind of some desire for freedom and some desire to escape that mundane life.
So let me get this right. You're trying to fight the devil with the Beelzebub, basically. You're escaping your programmer job and the donors by going into your bedroom, close off from the world, and find some inner space, sort of, or doing more stuff on the computer because you haven't done enough all day.
Well, it's using the computer for something much more enjoyable. So, in a way, I think it made my job easier because I started to see computers as a friendly thing rather than just this thing that's to do with making money and working for a boss. And
what sort of computing have you been using then?
We started off with Amigas and using a program called Dr. T's, which is quite a famous one for the Amiga Commodore. And then about 5 years ago we got Macs. 6 years ago we got Macs. So we're fairly new to kind of Macs and Logic Audio and all that stuff.
So you got the ST still lying around?
Yeah, we still use the Amiga for some stuff. It's got a very crude, dirty little sampler on it, which still sounds better than most samplers.
Where's all the fascination with odd time signature and all that kind of stuff coming from?
I think it's just because you can do it. It's easy enough just to set up a time signature, and you don't really have any idea what the time signature is when you're setting it. You sort of work it out, and you set a loop up, and you sort of do something in 9/4 and think, well, it's just to try something different. I don't think there's anything more to it than that. And actually slowly sort of educating ourselves with music that does use different time signatures, rather than everything being 4/4. It's just we grew up listening to so much 4/4 music. At some point you sort of crack and go, it would be nice to hear something that resolves in a different way or makes you kind of just has a different groove to it.
Obviously, drums and all these things sounded kind of different. Was there any sort of special motivation apart from just the difference, or where did that love for the oddness come in?
I think originally we didn't set out with the aim of making anything particularly odd. You just write what you think is music, what your kind of music, and you write to the extent of your capability, and in that time it comes out original. It becomes original partly because of your lack of knowledge, and you don't have any reference points. You're not referencing yourself, whereas now we've been doing it for so long, we can perhaps reference ourselves, so it's a lot harder to be original. And to have the intention to be original is a bit of a contradiction, really, because that means you're actually trying to be original, which is very hard with your sort of with the human mind, because all you've really got to reference is your past, and most of the things that I hear that are original, I think, have probably been arrived at by accident or through a group. I think when there's a group working together, it's far easier to be original, because then you have all the kind of conflicts and compromises of a group. When you're working by yourself, I think you end up falling into the same sort of routines and formulas. Working in a group as musicians anyway, especially if you're not players, if you're all working with computers, the idea of doing a jam together it's getting easier now because of the software and the speed of computing, but in the old days it was very difficult unless you had a huge kind of analog system, an old modular system where you could all kind of get in and patch things.
So how do you keep the egos in check in such a situation? Because obviously, I mean, the world is full of stories with people fighting over who did what in a particular track, because there's not always good times, especially in a band. And when you fall out later and all these kind of things, how do you avoid these sort of traps?
It depends if it's a commercial endeavour. If you're going into this collaboration with the idea of releasing it, then probably sort it out beforehand. But if it's just you're just doing it for the fun of it, then it's not really an issue. And if you really are friends with these people, then it's not going to be an issue. I mean, it never was. I've never worked on anything where there's been anything contentious at the end of it. It's always just been a straight. If there's 4 of us, then it's 25% split. There's no I did this or I did this. It's not. There's not enough income to get into that. If we were talking about millions of pounds, then maybe it would be more contentious. But when it's like 500 quid, you're just happy for your 100 quid and that's it. So
Obviously, your music attracted a lot of followers from, like you say, academia and, you know, people with classes and beards and, you know, that sort of thing. And but a lot of the music is somehow has a certain fear of melody and beauty, and you guys absolutely did not seem to have that at all.
I think we grew up listening to electro and sort of hip-hop as it was developing, really, in the early 80s and mid-80s, because we were breakers, we were dancers, really. So the idea of academic music was just sort of laughable to us. It doesn't make sense. And that it was all about bass lines, which is, you know, it's a melody. It was all about bass lines and beats. The idea that something was atonal or didn't have a melody would have just been fairly nonsensical as well. It's like our idea of music was almost like a pop format, which was it's got to have its drums, it's got to have its bass, it's got to have its melody. And I think we still have that to a point, and I think we both get moved by melodies. So I think it's a love of electro and a love of some pop music as well.
What sort of pop music?